All right.
All right, we got people rolling in. We'll just give it a minute.
Yeah, let's get this party started.
Good. Folks are able to get in. Perfect. We'll let everybody find their seats.
That's
You're going.
that's a fun way to look at it. Find your seats. Uh, there was a funny part yesterday, MJ. I was dancing up on stage just to prove a point, and I wanted people to come up on stage and dance with me, but
How'd that work out?
it did not. Yeah. Uh,
I'm
I
sure there's a
realized I'm not a
video somewhere.
performer. I'm a SME. Yeah.
I'm
Uh,
sure we'll see it online soon.
yeah, there we go.
We'll give it like a minute more, and then we'll jump into it because people are going to start to stream in when they can, and then yeah, this will be good. We'll rock it here in a second. All right, I think we're good to go. Right? You good, Dan? Sweet. Let's
I'm
dive into
ready.
it.
Let's roll.
Perfect. Well, welcome everybody. My name's MJ. I work at Interplay Learning. This is going on my fourth year here. I work predominantly entirely on the sales side, so I'm going to be able to bring a little bit of the insight on how I've seen solutions align with a lot of folks I've worked with in the past in various industries and in different fields. And I think you'll find that we have a unique ability to do that. But today's discussion is about a very unique part about what we do, and that's how training drives uptime, efficiency, and reliability. And what we're talking about is the preventative maintenance lifecycle. So I'm joined today with Dan Clapper, and I'm not going to be the only one talking because he's really the expert in the room when it comes to this subject matter. So I'm going to hand it over to Dan and let him give himself an introduction, and then we'll talk about what we're gonna go over today.
Cool, cool. Yeah, so I'm Dan Clapper. I have a pretty fun title here, head of learner and business outcomes. And my experience, I have visited facilities across the country, and I would come in as a technical trainer, right? And so I've gotten to see a lot of what we're experiencing in the field, and then how do we build programs to, solve a lot of the problems we have here? So when we think of learner outcomes and business outcomes, you're going to kind of see that magic happen in the presentation today. Like there's a world where learning helps the learner, but how do we actually impact the business and how do we grow this together holistically? So those are going to be my fun talk tracks today.
Yeah. And while and even though Dan said presentation, this is going to be a brief presentation, but this is largely looking for your engagement. There's going to be a Q&A session on the latter half of this where we're going to be discussing a lot of the questions that are going to be popped into the chat. So if we're talking about something or you're thinking of something as we're discussing this, throw it in that chat and then we'll be able to recall it at that session. Now, the first half of this meeting is going to be all about the preventative maintenance life cycle, right? And the various stages of that. So I do not have control of the slides, but let's talk about framing this channel, right? Challenge. Obviously, y'all can look at the numbers here. I don't really need to walk this group through the pains of not keeping up with your facility maintenance and the training of the folks that are responsible for that. But there's definitely some returns of investment when we talk about what happens when we look to those groups and we look to improve that preventive maintenance life cycle. So uh, there's a lot we're going to discuss when it comes to what costs folks, and actually Dan's going to be giving some stories later on. But Dan, do you want to kind of dive into just really quick, top of mind, because we're going to get to this again later. What have you seen that happens with groups that do not invest? And their preventive maintenance groups and this life cycle.
Yeah, but probably the best way. Let's think of the fun way I'm going to answer that right now. Go way off script, right? Like when I think of preventative maintenance, most companies are operating the way I like to call it is almost like it's a big game of telephone. Like we do this process in our organization because this is what the person before us did and the person before us did. And it's like this long journey of preventative maintenance. Well, why do you guys do that? Well, that's how we were taught before, and we were taught before. And it's almost like it's just the phrase we always hear, like, this is the way we've always done it, right?
Status
And
quo.
nobody has taken the time to get to that root cause, to really understand, well, wait a minute, why are we doing this? This is the way we've always done it, but why are we doing this? And I think what happens is over time, that game of telephone, our preventative maintenance programs just continue to deteriorate and deteriorate to it's like it's a program by accident because it's just what we do. So as we go through the steps of the process today, we're going to kind of flip that mindset on its head of like the way that we've always done it might not be the right way. Take a look at these numbers. I mean, there's a lot of money hemorrhaging for not having a great program here.
Right, and that's largely, to kind of expand on that is built around that framework, right? That preventative maintenance life cycle. It's a cycle, and we're going to talk about what it means to go through this cycle because it's not something you just do once, right? Like a successful diet is, and I crash diet for a couple of weeks. That doesn't last. It's a change in lifestyle, and that's what we're talking about here when we talk about facility maintenance. So the four stages of this, and we'll be revisiting these, right? Because it's cyclical, is you get your assessment and planning, and Dan's going to elaborate on each one of these. The After you do your assessment and planning, you can now move on to your implementation and execution, making sure you're doing the correct things to have the effects you're looking for. And to make sure you're having those desirable effects, you're going to be monitoring it, right? All the while going through those processes and optimizing it, looking for that continuous improvement. And what does that mean doing? Going back and assessing, right? Replanning. So what we're going to do right now is Dan is going to kick things off with talking about just phase one. And then we're going to quickly touch on each one of these phases and then move into that Q&A section. So as we're going over these, remember, throw any questions you have or comments in the chat so we can talk about those.
Yeah, that's great. And I love how you said that. I mean, we could call it a preventive maintenance program, but what you just said, people build a program and then they put it in a binder and then it sits on the shelf and now it's not a life cycle anymore. It's a program that slowly is dying over time because we're not paying attention to it, right? So when I think about this phase one, this assessment and planning, the word I want to use here when you think about assessment and planning, this phase is all about the data, right? So I want to break data into kind of two buckets. So the first bucket, in my mind, is what I'm going to call mechanical readiness data, right? What is breaking the most? What equipment is most at risk? How long can we afford the downtime? And probably the most scary question about the mechanical side is why are things breaking? You know, a lot of times we don't take that time to answer why things are breaking because we're just so busy putting out fires all day, right? But so that's a question we need to ask. I see it all the time on the mechanical side, like, oh, well, yeah, we change that motor every four months. And I'm like, well, isn't the manufacturer say that's supposed to last a little bit longer? Yeah, but this is the way it is here. We're going to just keep changing this again and again. So I think some organizations track this a little bit, but how can we get better data? Because data is where it all starts. And then the second piece of data, and I think a lot of organizations are missing this part of the data, and what I'm going to call it is the people readiness side of the data. All right. So do all of our people have the right skills? Do they understand how to service the equipment? Do they know the right steps? Um, we hear all the time from the customers and the people we work with, like, yeah, we got this resume. They said they can do this, this, and this. And then when we get them out there to do the task, they can't do it. Well, I mean, MJ, you probably hear this on the sales side too when you're talking with customers that like we we just went by their resume, and then when they get out and do the work, they're not able to do it effectively. Do it in the right order. Maybe they don't know the right tasks. Maybe they just learned from the person before them that big game of telephone, right? So when I think about assessing and people readiness, it's like we have to understand where the skill sets are. We have to understand where the gaps are, right? And you might be saying, well, wait a minute, Dan, this sounds like a lot of work. And if you take the time to do the mechanical readiness assessment and the people readiness assessment, you have to do that to build a program that's actually going to be super effective. But what do most companies do? They don't actually take the time to do this. We're just busy putting out fires every day and then wondering why we have these big costs of downtime and everything else. So the real concept here is if we think about these two data points, how do we combine this like mechanical data and the people data and really find this sweet spot to make an impact in our organization? And I think this is really when we start switching to reactive to proactive. Because once I have this data, this second part of this stage one here, assessment and planning, once I have the data, now I can make informed decisions. So that, I know I spent a lot of time here just on stage one, but it's kind of most important, and it's probably what most people skip.
Right. How do you know what you know? Where are you getting the information that you understand that from, right? I just a little bit of my experience in education is that I was a teacher for 14 years, and you would never just start off the year, just start teaching. Right now, the very first thing you do is you assess on day one, so that you know where you're beginning with at the individual level, right? And how are you going to make sure that you are improving over time without that assessment over time? So it's something we revisit and we improve upon. So great point there. Training isn't just an afterthought, right? It's a very integral part of the process. So let's talk about implementation and execution, right? That second phase, right? You can take that assessment and that plan, that information, the data that you can trust, because this is the data you need to rely on. This is data that you at some point are going to own, whether it's good or bad. How do we now take that data, implement and execute a successful program in response to it?
Yeah, I'm happy you said that too, MJ. I was just thinking of one of my favorite phrases I like to say is a lot of people get scared when they hear the word assessment. Probably even the kids in education, right? Like, oh crap, here I go. I got to take another test. When I think about assessment, it's not about pass or fail. We can't view assessment that way. We have to look at it as we're going to figure out where the areas we have gaps and where we can grow. That's got to be the framework of assessment, because if it's just around, oh, I'm going to fail this or everything else, there's some negative connotations. But when we work with helping people understand the people gaps or the mechanical gaps or whatever is going on in the program, like, this is exciting. We're finding out where we can grow and get better, right? So with that, let's talk more about the implementation and execution side of this. Uh, you know, it's funny. Like, I think of the word execution, I'm like, man, that's a scary word. Execution, right? But we can have the best plans in the world, but if we don't follow through with the plan, like our preventative maintenance life cycle is going to break down pretty quickly. I think there's a lot of companies that might have all the preventative maintenance steps for the mechanical equipment in a binder on the shelf. And probably most of the technicians have never even read them, right? So it's like, how do we execute the plan? How do we make sure we're actually doing what we say we wanted to do? That's really, I think you said that too a little bit earlier, MJ. Like, execution is just doing what we say we're going to do. And if we're being honest with ourselves, this this just doesn't happen as much in the maintenance world. And why is that? We get caught up in the day to day. We get caught up in the fires we have to put out. A lot of different things. We really have to take the time to look at what we're are we doing what we say we're going to do? So questions where we can get a little deeper into this, like on the mechanical side, are the tasks being done correctly? And are they being done on time? This gets the ability to track more data here, right? Um, there's more and more systems we're seeing out there where there's uh, information systems that technicians are using where they're logging a lot of this data. And this is where now we can make better decisions. Okay, the tasks are being done on time. They're not being done on time. And really, the second side of the data, back to the people side, do the techs know why each preventative maintenance step matters? Yes, they might see the manual and it says lubricate a bearing. Okay, this is what the manual says, I'm going to do it. But do they know why they're lubricating that bearing? Or do they know why they're going through the steps? Do they know why it's important to change the filter every 12 months or 6 months? Like, a lot of that piece of the puzzle will help with the execution, right? And I think if the answer is no, like if your tasks aren't being done correctly on time, or the techs don't know the why of each step, I always say, just like what I was saying about an assessment, like, oh, that's great because that tells me there's an opportunity we can improve the program now, right? And when we think about preventative maintenance programs failing, this is really where the programs start to break down. Like we can start understanding the root causes of where our program is breaking down, because we're starting to look at this data. Are we understaffed? Are we underskilled? Do we have the right tools? Do we have the right resources? Do we have the right knowledge? Most of this gets uncovered, not in that assessment and planning stage, but when we actually go out and the technicians have to do the work, right? And so when we start implementing this plan, that's when a lot of the challenges start coming up. And MJ, probably you can relate even to the teaching side in your career too. Like, it's not so much the assessments, it's like day two when you ask them how to do a math question and they don't know what they're doing, right?
Right.
So that's really how I look at the implementation and execution side.
Right. And the execution, like you said, it comes down to the readiness of your people. Right. You can have a great program, but at the end of the day, we're really going to gauge it on how ready is everyone for when we need them to be in action. So let's shift what happens when you've got that preventative maintenance cycle kind of up and running. Those tasks are going. You have the program up and going. How do you know that it's working? Where does that come from, and how is that different than phase one?
Yeah, and I think when I think of monitoring and optimization, it's like these first two stages, we're really looking at more of the higher level data or the holistic data. I'm looking at as the program as a whole, or I'm looking at my people as a whole. Where are the skill gaps, things like that. When I think about monitoring and optimization, this is where we take that next step deeper into the data, right? So, like on the mechanical side, is there specific failures for specific assets that keep happening over and over again? Like I said, that motor that keeps failing or something. If I know that I keep replacing this motor every 3 or 4 months, or what's happening here, maybe it's time for me to dive deeper into that specific asset. Let's start optimizing whatever is going wrong with this piece of the holistic program. Let's get it right. And when you think about that, I keep going back and forth here between the mechanical and the people. Guess what? It's the same thing for the people,
They're
right?
all
Are we
assets.
are we tracking the errors or delays by individual technician? I might have one tech that can replace that motor in an hour, and I might have one tech that it takes from 6 or 7 hours, right? And this data is so critical to help us improve our program. Think about that. If I know that there's this gap here between technicians, that's something I can train on. That's something I can skill on because I know it's possible that it can get done in an hour. But I have, maybe newer techs, younger techs, or people that were just never taught the right way that are taking 6, 7 hours to do a task. This is where that monitoring and optimization really comes in. And we can get prescriptive with how we solve these issues.
Absolutely. Okay, so that makes sense. And so we're always it's not just monitoring machines, it's also monitoring the individuals, the all the assets within your corporation, right? But let's move it on to that final phase, right? The continuous improvement. Building on what we've created, building on what we've already established, where do we go from here?
Yeah. So when I think about continuous improvement, and we kind of touched on this a little bit in the beginning, like continuous improvement to me is a buzzword, and I'm like, man, I don't care about that word, right? Continuous improvement. Really, that's why I want people to think about how we treat preventative maintenance as a loop, as a something that keeps going around and around again, right? And that's why we're calling even the title of this webinar, right? A preventative maintenance life cycle. This isn't some program that you just put together and I know that I got a program and it's working, all right? I got it. Here's my documents. I know it's working. It's like this has to be continuously monitored and continuously improved. And the way
Okay.
I look at it is just little pieces over time. And we're going to get the data, build the plan, execute the plan. We're going to monitor it and keep refining. And like you said earlier, MJ, we're gonna have more data. Let's go back to the beginning. Maybe we have to adjust the plan a little bit. Um, and really, uh, when I think about this stage, there's a really powerful part of this stage that gets skipped a lot. Um, and why I think the preventative maintenance program needs to be like a living, breathing, continuous loop, like keep going, because people are involved, right? Our technician, like this, they're not robots, they're people, right? And I think this is where we can rely on our teams to get better data. Like the part I like about continuous improvement is this is where we actually get that technician involvement. Who has the ideas to improve this process? I've been in a lot of manufacturing plants where they have these boards where people can put sticky notes that, oh, maybe if we do this process a little bit different, a little bit better, a little bit different. What happens in this continuous improvement stage is this is where we really get the employee buy-in, and now everybody is working together to make the whole system great.
Yeah, I mean, so it seems so intuitive, right? Like, I don't, it seems like this should make sense. So why aren't more folks doing it? What's the logjam there? Why can't more folks get a preventive maintenance program that works for them as a successful?
Yeah, I think I I gotta think about that, but really, I think the best way to explain it is when we think preventative maintenance, we I wish I had a manual or something. Let's just say that's a manual. We think, oh, I have a manual. Here are the steps. It's a process we need to complete. It sounds simple on paper. I have to go from A to B. It's just this process. Gotta go through it. I think what's really holding people back is this thing of understanding that it's not just the mechanical part of preventative maintenance that we're working on. There's people involved, right? So if we take this variable of all the people involved and all the equipment involved, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. It gets kind of messy. So this is why a lot of people are like, Well, we're just going to kind of be more reactive and just do the process just to get through the day. The best programs is when we build systems, because when we build these systems, like a better preventative maintenance system or life cycle as we're calling it today, we have the data, we can train better, we can continue to grow it. This is really where we need to get to, but it's going to take a little bit of work to get there. And I think that's what scares a lot of people. So most people stay in this reactive state instead of being proactive.
Absolutely. No, everything you're saying is making sense. And when we talk about, you know, all of these different issues, I'm curious to hear what folks have said throughout our conversation, just regarding their questions and any things that they, any comments they might have had to relate to. So, let's just give it a second, see where those questions have popped into. One thing you mentioned though about it being a process, I do want to call out is that as a former teacher, and I talked to a lot of folks about this, I think what really is the shift for a lot of groups is making it an expectation, right? Changing it from that process, that checking of a box to like, no, this is actually something that is expected to be done, and setting up the procedures to back up those expectations, right? So you can reinforce it. And if you have a framework around that, then you're likely going to be successful. Um, so let's go over some of the questions that have popped in here. We're getting our systems. All right. So how do you strike the balance? This is a good one. I actually get this a lot. How do you strike the balance between training new techs and then reskilling your experienced ones? This is so true of the environment today because it's all over the place, right? The industry has changed so much. So you're going to have a whole group pretty consistently that's green, and then you have other groups that are going to have varying levels of experience. You might have addressed this already, but go ahead and touch on how would you address that?
Yeah, I think it's well, you start thinking about this preventative maintenance life cycle we're talking about. It's still the same process. New techs versus experienced techs, a lot of times, well, they've been doing it 20, 30, 40 years. But like I said, was that the game of telephone? They've been changing the motors on that pump for 40 years and haven't really figured out the why behind it. So when I think about new techs and senior techs, existing techs, let's start at the beginning of this loop again, right? How do we assess the skill sets and not only understand if the technicians understand the how, but maybe we have to go through the why again. Why is it important to lubricate a motor or whatever the process is? So the way I look at it is the newer techs, they need more foundational knowledge. They need repetition. I'm a big fan of kind of up having a little bit more time for training for your newer techs. We've seen the best case somewhere between probably 3 to 4 hours a week, if not more. And I don't mean all of this at once, but like little micro learning sessions, maybe 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there. And we can talk about that more in a little bit. And then the senior techs, it's more about the updates. Maybe there's better processes now. Maybe there's better ways to service the equipment. And probably the painful truth is with the senior techs or the reskilling. The way I like to think about it is it's a little bit of unlearning the bad habits. These technicians over time, I mean, maybe they start skipping using their PPE, and maybe they start cutting corners a little bit because they just want to get it done, right? So a lot of times, even if someone's been doing it 20, 30, 40 years, there's always room for growth.
All right. some humbling is in order for some of those older folks, I find. You talk to enough people and you give them an assessment, and you start to find out that, yeah, you have 20 years of experience, but 20 years, it might be a couple of those years on repeat because you're largely doing the same thing. So we present a new system to you. You get a brand new VRF in your municipality or your district, and now your old folks are going, well, heck, I've never messed with one of these VRFs before. How does this work? Now, Tim's got a great question he put into the chat. He said, since most plants are production driven, what happens if you don't have access to equipment? How should preventive maintenance, or how specific should that preventive maintenance task be? If that makes sense,
Yeah,
because there's going to be unique systems in each one. So that is a good question.
yeah, and I think that the question there is when we think about the step-by-step process of a preventative maintenance, uh, I don't know, what do we call that? Like just a step-by-step process. I'm gonna maintain a HVAC equipment, whatever it is. Um, it might say lubricate the bearings, but does that mean 1 ounce? Does that mean 4 ounce? Does that mean 10 ounce? Does that mean 20 ounce? It could mean a bunch of different things to a bunch of different people, right? So what happens is sometimes we're going right to the how. Oh, I'm going to get on my one of my favorite talk tracks here, right? But what the most of training done in our skilled trades place is on the job training. We're teaching people the how. They're like, okay, lubricate. I'm gonna get my, grease gun and I'm gonna put a bunch of grease in here until it's squirting out all over the place. But this is why when we focus just on the how, like on the job training or anything like that, the technicians don't actually understand why they're greasing it in the first place. What are the characteristics of that lubrication? What types of bearings need what type of lubrication? There's a big part of understanding the why of of all the preventative maintenance processes, because guess what? Just like what you just said, I get a new piece of equipment in my building. If I could try to learn the how, but if I have a strong foundation of the why, if I understand how electricity flows through it and how the mechanical pieces work together, I can become a pretty good maintenance tech just by knowing all of the why and the foundational knowledge. I can show up to more pieces of equipment and kind of figure it out, even if I don't have the how, because I have that foundational knowledge. And I would say this is where the one of the biggest gaps we see when we talk to a lot of our customers.
Yeah. The having those processes makes it easy too, because when you've learned in a specific way, it does make it easy to take that way you learned in this aspect, and now you have something new. It's the same process, right? We're gonna bolt that onto this and take it into that new system. That's a great question. And as far as like specific metrics that you're looking to monitor, just track, what would be the metrics when we're talking about kind of like the Tim's question, uh, when you're taking someone through a preventive maintenance program? What do you track? Are we looking for hours? Are we looking for what are we looking for?
Yeah, and I want to. I've kind of kept this theme going, and I was going to answer this one way, but now I want to answer it a different way, right? Even with my title and what I've been saying through the presentation here, I think there's business metrics to track, but there's also learner metrics to track, right? Like, so the way I want to frame the metrics that matter, I want to start with the learner side first, the technician side first. Do you know what one of my favorite metrics are? Is confidence. Are 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 our technicians feeling confident enough to understand why they're doing what they're doing? One of the biggest things we hear from our customers is they're not confident. They're just going out there, they don't really know what they're doing, and they turn into parts changers and they're just swapping pieces out. Now, as we build training and we build confidence, this really creates better morale in the company. People want to stay around longer. We have a better retention rate. They want to, they want to work for more years to come because they feel like they're learning and they're growing and they're building confidence.
It's
So
supported.
I wanted to start with that part of the answer because I think that's a part that misses. A lot of times we still do look at the business metrics. Those are super important too. You know, what's the mean time to repair? What's the downtime cost? How many safety incidents? There's a lot of metrics that we can add up in a preventative maintenance program that like we can show value very quickly why it's important to invest in a program to make it better because there's a lot of cost tied up in that. Mean time to repair, downtime, like I said, safety
Outsourcing.
incidents, all these things. Like there's a lot of really cool metrics we can do on that side too.
Yeah, I just find that with my role that a lot of times folks, you don't always associate the right costs or metrics to the training, right? Training is always kind of put in this box over here, and it's not related to your HVAC, plumbing, electrical, facility maintenance costs, but those are all inclusive. Those are
Mhm.
all related. So absolutely, 100% agree with you there. So when we talk about let's say folks on this call have no program whatsoever. When you initiate a program, right, everything you just talked about sounds pretty seismic in its shift for a group. What is the best way to implement and onboard a program, a new training program, where one didn't exist before?
Yeah, I like to think about it in phases, probably is how I would answer that question. I mean, we've seen companies try to take that seismic approach all at once. Like, we're going to uproot everything we do, we're going to implement all these new processes. And guess what? It turns into a little bit of a challenge because there's a lot of change management that has to happen, right? A lot of times I talk about this, we're effectively a change management organization as a learning company because we're putting in processes that didn't exist before. So maybe if I have a facility that has 1,000 pieces of equipment, maybe we try just like you said, in VRF or something. Maybe we start with a small piece of the preventative maintenance in my building. I'm going to work on these 4 or 5 types of equipment. I'm going to assess my skills with my technicians. I'm going to review all the steps of the maintenance process. I'm going to build a program. I'm going to make sure that everyone gets trained up to speed. They know what they're doing, they know why they're doing, they know how to do it. And once I get that VRF system or whatever it is, okay, now that I understand and I've built this process, now let's go to the electrical systems, the plumbing systems, whatever it is in the building. I would almost take that approach instead of trying to just overhaul the preventative maintenance of every single thing in the building.
Yeah. How do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a
That's
time,
right. Yeah.
right? Yeah, I typically advise folks the same thing as the goal here is to be successful, right? And if the goal is to be successful, then you have to give yourself the space and the time to get that success. So I absolutely agree there. Okay, great. Let's look at some of these other questions that have come in. We have various localities of where we're getting questions from. So let me just scan these real quick. So yeah, you got another good one in the chat here. How will preventive maintenance programs affect reactive maintenance? In other words, breakdown maintenance when something goes down. Uh, and is that important? I I have an answer to this, but go ahead, Dan. Like this, I've come across this enough.
Yeah. I think I, the way my brain processes that question, right, is it's all feedback. It's all data, right? I mean, reactive maintenance, things are broken. We have to fix them. We have to go, like, in the moment, we have to take care of things that are happening. But the important thing is, okay, taking that data, all right, this thing is breaking again, breaking again. How do I go back to the beginning of the preventative maintenance life cycle and start looking at the assessment? Is this a mechanical issue or is this a people issue? Maybe the people that maintained it before maybe didn't follow the right steps. Maybe there was something that happened in the environment. Like there's a lot of things we can look at to get to the root cause. And what happens with reactive maintenance is we fix it, but then we get caught up in other things and it kind of just leaves our mind because we went there quick to fix it and now it's kind of gone. It's
Wish
important
I
to
would have
take
set
that
something up
data
once.
and truly unpack what happened.
No, absolutely. And then you find yourself telling yourself, well, hey, I'm going to set up something so this doesn't happen again. And you get wrapped up in life and work and all the things that come at you, and all those new fires that are coming up, and you don't take the time, instead of just constantly being reactive, to set up that proactive approach that's going to, over time, start to eliminate that reactivity. Absolutely. It's like, it definitely takes a bit of management there. So as we start to shift here towards the end of our discussion, I got a couple more questions that have come in. I think this one, it's, I'm interested to see your response because I'm wondering who posted this. If you had to pick one root cause behind preventative maintenance failure, is it the training or is it is it leadership? Is it something else? Uh, call someone out here, Dan. Whose fault is it?
Oh, yeah. Um, all right, I'll answer it two ways. So, uh, I honestly think I've been going back and forth between the mechanical side and the people side. I think the root cause of most preventative maintenance issues are actually on the people side, right? Mechanical equipment is gonna break. We know it's gonna break. It's just part of what happens. And we can handle that as it comes and everything else. What's really powerful about the people side is that's a part where we can actually vastly improve our processes on. We can train people better. We can show people the right way. We can teach them the why. We can teach them the how. So if I want to look at the root cause, I bet you in most incidents, there's some side of the people aspect where that got missed. Now, that being said, is that the individual's problem or is that the leadership's problem, right? And I think there's a little bit of leadership ownership here of trying to blame the technicians for things going wrong. And is that really the case? Probably not, right? The technician is doing it the way that they were taught or the way that they learned. So I think if I had to really say the root cause of most preventative maintenance, it's on the people side, but leadership has to have some ownership of that.
And here's what my response is to that is that everyone's to blame and no one's to blame because at some point everybody has a responsibility to know what they're doing. But the problem I find with most folks when I have these discussions is no one's ever set up a training program before. They've never thought about teaching, right? You can have a lead technician, a lead engineer on site who knows their business, but does that mean they know anything about educating another individual? No, it doesn't. And on-the-job training is the best way to learn, but it does help to have that assistance when it comes with the educational side of everything. Which actually dovetails great into what Rochelle just asked. She says, what is a good split for techs between preventive maintenance and reactive maintenance with an understaffed facility? And before you go, Dan, I have a response to this. Is turn all your preventive maintenance into also reactive. Make them all the same. If we set up a program that builds out that all-in-one technician, then you're going to start to eliminate your reactive by having better preventative because folks know why they're doing what they're doing. And then if something breaks or does fall apart, we're not relying on that one individual who knows how to go fix a centrifugal pump. Instead, we have several individuals who we can enact to go and solve that issue. Especially when you're understaffed, the best thing to do is make everybody viable. But Dan, I'm curious, you've actually worked in the industry. What
Yeah.
is your take on that?
Yeah, I think I mean, if I think of the root cause of this, there's a couple things, right? Understaffed, we hear, unfortunately, it's just the nature of the beast in our industries. It's almost every person we talked to was understaffed, right? So if I'm understaffed, that means I have a lot of work that needs to get done, but it's not getting done in time, right? So now we're starting to talk, well, okay, if I'm understaffed, the issue is I don't have the time to do this the right way, right? If I had all this extra time, yes, I could build out all the programs, I can be proactive, I can do everything right, but we just don't have that luxury, right? So when I hear questions like this, it always still comes back to the people side is I'm being reactive because I have a lot of things breaking and I have to continue to fix that. So if I can spend my time on developing the skill sets of my technicians to where I can start reducing the time for me to complete these tasks in a reactive way, I can start building a little bit more time to be on the proactive side of, okay, now that I've shortened the, like I said, instead of it taking 7 hours to change a motor, maybe I'm getting it down to 3 or 4 through training. This is investing in our people and investing in our time. So probably similar to your answer, MJ, is like I still look at it, it's not proactive versus reactive. It's understanding where the skill gaps are, and I want to just reduce the time to get the task done.
Nice. So let's start to wrap it up with, I think, a good question that came through is, uh, you have folks, most maintenance teams I meet with, when if I get a chance to meet with the folks on the ground, they're ready to learn. They're eager to learn, and they're pretty honest about what they don't know sometimes when they're with me, because they want to be able to express where they want to improve. But how do you convince leadership that this expense, right, this budgetary item is worth it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, right? Here I am kind of blaming leadership, but we have to get buy-in from people that are signing the check, right? So I probably sound like a broken record here, but it all comes down to the data, right? I think a lot of organizations are not tracking the data correctly, so they can't tell the story to leadership correctly. I like the question in the chat there about reactive maintenance. If I can make the case from a data perspective, hey, look, we're understaffed. We are barely getting the jobs done right now. We're barely even getting the jobs done that we need to get done every single day. I have 28 tickets and I'm only getting to 22. I really want to implement this training program because it's going to help me be more effective to complete these tasks quicker. And that will equate to a savings of, I don't know, $100,000 of downtime. It's going to build the confidence. I'm going to have less technicians leaving the company because they feel overwhelmed and overworked. We're going to build the confidence. If I start adding up these data points, this is where I can actually get a leader to say, oh, well, wait a minute. That actually makes sense. This is not an expense. This is an investment for us to be more efficient and more effective, which I think was the subtitle of our webinar. And I just kind of pulled that out. But that's exactly what we're trying to get at here, right? So we have to tell the story better, but we have to tell it with data too.
Sounds good. No, that's great. So I think this is a good place to start to wrap it up. I think, when we talk about what all went down today with this conversation, downtime is costly. Outsourcing help, costly. Anytime we can improve our maintenance staff in-house, we are going to be reducing those costs. So that's all about the preventive maintenance life cycle and adhering to it. So with that in mind, I invite all the attendees, to now give your folks an assessment. Try to figure out what they know and where they're at. Don't just take them at their word, but actually get in there and find out what they know. If you're looking for preventative maintenance, that should be no mystery. By now, the Interplay learning is a supplement for that. We are definitely a resource in helping folks build out, plan, and execute the preventative maintenance programs. And we have a lot of different options for folks, but the main thing I usually address with individuals is the customizableness of it, right? We typically work with industries all over the place. That's why this has been a very general conversation about preventative maintenance. We work with industrial, commercial, residential. And so what we can do is take our training and leverage it specifically for your group of individuals and then support it with our training coaches and client success team. So I highly encourage y'all to check us out. Again, my name is MJ. I work here at Interplay Learning, and then I have Dan Clapper here. Dan, you want to say goodbye to everybody?
Yeah, that's great. And again, it's like, don't forget, although we're in the mechanical business and the maintenance business, we're really in the people business. Like that's what it's all about, and that's where my passion is. So love
Yeah,
to chat with anyone. Find me on LinkedIn, send me a message. Love it.
yeah. Well, thanks everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Y'all take care.